There is a pattern older than modern finance, older than central banks, older than democracy itself. It's a pattern that has destroyed every empire that dared to believe its currency could defy history. Spain believed it, Britain believed it, the Soviet Union believed it. Now America believes it too. In the 1500s, Spain extracted mountains of silver from the New World. Its coin became global tender, until overspending, imperial wars, and debt defaults shattered its foundation. In the 20th century, Britain ruled a quarter of the planet. The pound sterling backed global trade, until war, inflation, and abandonment of gold stripped it of power. In 1991, the Soviet ruble collapsed in just 900 days. Military might couldn't save it. Oil couldn't anchor it. Collapse came not from enemies, but from imbalance. Each empire followed the same seven-stage decline, and each reached a point of no return. Today, in 2025, the U.S. stands at stage 6, debt, $38.1 trillion, FX share falling, interest costs unsustainable, trust in the dollar eroding. The illusion of control is ending, because this isn't about one country, it's about a pattern. And patterns don't care about exceptions. They only end one way. This isn't just another fiscal cycle. It's not inflation versus deflation, not Democrat versus Republican. It's deeper than all of that. This is the collapse pattern of a reserve currency. Every global empire begins the same way: productive, disciplined, and dominant. Its currency becomes the benchmark because it's backed by real output, trust, and strategic power. But over time, the cycle turns. Military commitments multiply. Foreign wars expand. Domestic spending explodes. The empire promises more than it produces. And the only solution becomes the printing press. It happened to Spain when silver lost value faster than ships could carry it. It happened to Britain when the pound detached from gold. It happened to the USSR when military overreach collided with internal decay. And it's happening to the US right now. The signs are everywhere. Debt to GDP at 122%. Annual interest payments crossing $1.2 trillion. The dollar's share of global reserves dropping from 85% to 58%. Trade deficits above $800 billion. Military spending near $850 billion annually. BRICS creating commodity-backed alternatives. Central banks dumping treasuries, stockpiling gold. This is no longer theory. This is progression. The decline of the dollar is not about collapse overnight. It's about loss of function, reduced trust, weakening utility. And once that trust fractures, the system unravels fast, because reserve status is not a right. It's a contract with the world, and the world is renegotiating. Spain was the first to wear the crown of global currency, and the first to lose it. By the mid-1500s, the Spanish Empire controlled vast colonies in the Americas. From Potosi and Zacatecas flowed endless rivers of silver. Spanish coins, known as pieces of 8, became the global medium of trade, the dollar of their time. But empire has a cost. Spain waged war across Europe. It funded religious crusades, naval fleets, and global conquests. Military expenditure consumed more than 60% of the crown's revenue. And to sustain it, the empire borrowed, heavily, when silver shipments couldn't cover the debt. Spain debased its currency, adding copper to coins. Trust began to fade. Prices rose. Economic output fell. And the rot set in. Between 1557 and 1607, Spain defaulted on its sovereign debt 4 times. Not because it lacked gold or armies, but because it lacked fiscal discipline. Imports replaced local production. Industries collapsed. Inflation ravaged the population. And as credit dried up, the empire's reach contracted. 1607 marked the final blow. Spain suspended all payments on its debt. The world's dominant currency became untrustworthy. Merchants demanded alternatives. Financial power shifted north, toward Amsterdam and London. The lesson was clear. Even oceans of silver cannot protect a currency that loses its foundation. And Spain never recovered its monetary dominance. Its fall set the template for every empire that followed. Because empire isn't lost in battle, it's lost in budgets. Britain inherited the throne Spain left behind. By the 19th century, the British Empire spanned every continent. The pound sterling, backed by gold, was the global standard. Trade, diplomacy, and war all ran on British finance. But dominance bred overreach. World War I shattered Britain's balance sheet. War debts soared, gold reserves drained, and inflation eroded domestic strength. Yet the illusion of control persisted. In 1925, Britain tried to return to the gold standard, but at the wrong price. The pound was overvalued, exports collapsed, and deflation crushed industry. By 1931, it was over. Britain abandoned gold entirely. It chose currency over credibility. The pound began a long decline. It lost 90% of its value during the 20th century. Its share of global reserves collapsed from over 60% to under 5%. The empire disintegrated after World War II, from India to Africa to the Caribbean. And by 1949, even the illusion of dominance was gone. Financial power shifted again, this time to America. But Britain's decline wasn't just about war. It was about promises exceeding capacity, entitlement over adjustment, and the unwillingness to sacrifice now to save later. The empire didn't end with a bang. It ended with a currency no one trusted. And the pound, once the heartbeat of global finance, became a memory, a warning sealed in history. Because reserve status isn't lost when the currency drops. It's lost when the world stops caring. The Soviet Union didn't begin as a financial empire. It built its power through ideology, military dominance, and raw resource control. But like every global player before it, the collapse began when economic illusion met systemic reality. By the 1970s, the USSR was the world's second largest economy. It controlled Eastern Europe, rivaled the US militarily, and projected influence through oil, steel, and fear. But beneath the surface, the decay was irreversible. Central planning crushed innovation. Corruption spread through every ministry. Consumer goods vanished while military production soared. By the 1980s, defense spending consumed 15 to 20% of Soviet GDP. The ruble wasn't traded globally. Prices were fixed by decree, not market. Black markets thrived, because reality had left the official economy behind. Then oil collapsed. From $40 in 1980 to under $10 by 1986. Oil's crash shattered the Soviet budget. Foreign exchange dried up, imports vanished, food shortages began. Between 1989 and 1991, it fell apart. In just 900 days, the ruble collapsed, inflation soared, 15 republics broke away, and the world's second superpower vanished without a war. The lesson? Even military giants crumble when economic trust breaks. Soviet power wasn't destroyed by tanks. It was hollowed out by unsustainable spending, fake pricing, and internal collapse. The ruble, once forced into regional dominance, became worthless. And once the world lost faith, it was over. No bailouts, no negotiations, just collapse. Because every system, even one with missiles, still runs on trust. And when trust dies, empires follow. Some empires don't collapse overnight. They bleed out slowly. A death by stagnation. Japan, the Ottoman Empire, France, all serve as variations on the same pattern. Decline masked by denial. In 1989, Japan was the richest country on Earth by asset value. The Nikkei index touched 39,000. Tokyo real estate was worth more than all of California. Experts warned America would be owned by Japan within a decade. Then the bubble burst. Equity markets collapsed. Real estate cratered. Debt soared. But instead of restructuring, Japan chose zombification. Endless stimulus, zero interest rates, and rolling bailouts. What followed was not a crash, but a coma. 30 years later, the Nikkei remains below 1989 levels in real terms. Japan's debt has crossed 260% of GDP. The yen is no longer a global benchmark. Growth is gone, youth stagnate, and monetary policy has no exit. The Ottoman Empire faced its reckoning in 1875, defaulting on its debt to European powers. In exchange, it ceded control of tax revenues, trade policy, and eventually sovereignty itself. The empire limped along, but power never returned. France, too, lost monetary sovereignty through cycles of inflation and revolution. From the livre to the franc to the euro, its national currency was absorbed into a multinational compromise. Monetary independence, once a pillar of empire, faded into history. These cases show the slow burn collapse. No fireworks, just erosion. Not every empire dies in fire. Some die in silence, buried beneath their own refusal to change. Because collapse isn't always an explosion. Sometimes it's an echo that fades over decades. Empires don't fall randomly. They follow a sequence, a pattern etched into centuries of history. And every reserve currency power from Rome to Washington has walked through the same 7 stages. Stage 1, euphoria. This is the birth of dominance. The empire rises on real production, innovation, and global respect. Its currency becomes trusted because it reflects value. Spain had silver. Britain had industry. America had post-war supremacy. Trust is earned. Capital flows in. Stability is globalized. Stage 2, expansion. With trust comes power projection. Militaries grow. Foreign bases spread. The empire defends allies, polices trade routes, and funds influence globally. It works, until costs outrun returns. Spain fought half of Europe. Britain maintained naval dominance. The U.S. now operates 750 military bases across 80 countries. Stage 3. Overreach. Trade deficits emerge. Domestic industries hollow out. The empire imports more than it exports. Fiscal deficits widen as entitlement spending surges. Spain outsourced production. Britain lost competitiveness. America today runs an $800 billion trade deficit and a $2 trillion fiscal gap. Debt grows, but growth slows. Stage 4. Financialization. Real output fades. Finance becomes the engine. Banks dominate. Bubbles grow. Wealth is made from leverage, not labor. The currency still holds, but only because there's no alternative. Yet. Britain in the 1920s, America in the 2000s. Asset bubbles replace productivity. Stage 5. Denial. Policymakers insist, this time is different. They print more, stimulate more, delay reforms. The empire refuses to scale back, because it can't. Spain minted copper. Britain overvalued the pound. America now runs QE and deficit stimulus, while inflation rises. Stage 6. Crisis confidence cracks. Foreigners sell the currency. Interest payments spike. Political division paralyzes governance. Spain defaulted. Britain abandoned gold. The USSR imploded. The US is now at stage 6. $1.2 trillion in interest payments, 35% of tax revenue to debt, FX reserve share falling fast. Domestic political fracture. Stage 7. Collapse. Reset. This is the final stage. Reserve status is lost. The currency is replaced, slowly or violently. Capital flees. Power contracts. A new order begins. Sometimes with war, sometimes with restructuring, but always with pain. This isn't prophecy, it's precedent. Every great currency followed these steps, and America is just one move away from the end. The data is undeniable. The U.S. is now deep in stage 6, crisis. Debt has crossed $38 trillion. That's 122% of GDP, and it's still rising, with no plan to stop. In 2025, interest payments alone will cost over $1.2 trillion. That's more than the U.S. spends on national defense, and over 35% of total tax revenue. This is not sustainable. Global confidence in the dollar is eroding. In 1999, over 85% of global reserves were held in USD. Today, it's just 58%, and falling. Central banks across Asia, the Middle East, and even Europe are diversifying, not just into gold, but into other currencies. BRICS has already launched bilateral trade systems that bypass the dollar entirely. Meanwhile, the world's largest oil exporters, including Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are finalizing non-dollar energy deals. China and Russia now conduct over 90% of bilateral trade in yuan or rubles. India and Brazil have built settlement systems to bypass SWIFT entirely. At home, the U.S. is facing fracture. Political polarization has frozen fiscal reform. Entitlements exceed revenue. Social unrest is rising. The Fed is cornered, trapped between inflation and recession. Every new stimulus erodes future credibility. The pattern is precise. Fiscal overreach, loss of external trust, internal breakdown, currency crisis. And once trust breaks, recovery is no longer policy. It becomes luck. The world isn't waiting for a dollar collapse. It's preparing for a post-dollar system. The U.S. won't vanish overnight, but its control over global capital flows, commodity pricing, and financial infrastructure is slipping quietly, relentlessly, permanently. Because empire doesn't end with war. It ends when the money it prints no longer matters. Where does it go from here? There are only two paths left, and both are painful. Path 1. The soft landing. America gradually loses reserve status, not from collapse but from erosion. The dollar becomes just another currency, not the currency. Borrowing costs rise. Deficits can't be monetized. The Fed loses global demand for treasuries. Social programs are cut. Military commitments shrink. Living standards reset. This is the path of Britain. Slow, humiliating decline, but survivable. The catch? It requires discipline. Cutting spending, raising taxes, reforming entitlements, accepting limits. And no empire has ever taken that path voluntarily. Path 2. The hard reset. A trigger event. A market rejection. A debt spiral. Confidence breaks in weeks, not decades. Capital flees. Interest rates explode. The Fed prints. Inflation surges. Foreigners dump treasuries. The dollar crashes. The U.S. faces a domestic and global liquidity crisis. And out of the ashes, a new system is born. Multipolar trade blocs, digital currency regimes, BRICS plus commodity settlements. Most Americans won't see it coming. They'll still believe the dollar is safe, just like the Spanish believed in silver. The British believed in the pound. The Soviets believed in oil, until the world stopped believing with them. History doesn't warn. It rhymes, with mathematical precision. You can't reverse stage 6, but you can prepare for stage 7, because once trust breaks, it never returns the same. And when this reset hits, it won't just be economic. It will be geopolitical, structural, psychological. This isn't the end of the U.S., but it is the end of the dollar as we know it. This is the pattern. Spain, Britain, USSR, Japan, America. 7 stages, 1 path, and always the same end. Empires rise through discipline, production, and credibility. They fall through excess, denial, and erosion of trust. It doesn't matter who's in office. It doesn't matter what the Fed says. It doesn't matter what the markets believe this quarter. Because empires don't die from external attack. They die from internal blindness. And America, for all its strength, wealth, and history, is not exempt from the cycle. The signs are not subtle. A $38 trillion debt spiral. A dollar that's losing global share. Interest expense now larger than defense. Political paralysis. And a world already building alternatives. This is not collapse. It is transition. But transitions are not peaceful. They are resets. And when the reset comes, Only those who studied the pattern will not be surprised, because the end was never sudden. It was always structured, because this isn't about currency, it's about empire, and the pattern never lies.